but it's not fully being talked about, and still, frankly, I think kind of being concealed by some of the data
all
that's
swept
coming
under
out.
the rug. Yeah.
Welcome to Loans Elevated, the podcast that brings you the latest industry news, expert interviews, and insightful discussions that will help you stay ahead in this dynamic market. I'm your host, Broch Lassig, and I've spent years in the trenches of the mortgage industry, helping individuals and businesses navigate the complex landscape of real estate financing.
I'm your co-host, TJ Heidenreich, and together we'll cover a wide range of topics, from business strategies that skyrocket your success to mindset and motivation that fuel your growth.
Welcome back again to Loans Elevated. I'm here with my fellow bear, and unfortunately today we're talking about some more doom and gloom, like a couple episodes ago. And really there's some additional information that we have seen over the past couple weeks that is pointing towards a pretty obvious slowdown in the U.S. economy, but it's like not fully being talked. I think there's more exposure, but it's not fully being talked about, and still, frankly, I think kind of being concealed by some of the data
All
that's
swept
coming
under
out.
the rug. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. So the first thing that I'll dive into is Q1 GDP. So this is the first quarter of 2024 GDP, or gross domestic product. This is just a function of how much spending and how much economic activity is happening domestically here in the United States. And this is how basically every economy is tracked, with the health of the economy is based on its GDP or the activity happening. And there are multiple readings that happen. So you have a first reading, and then you have a revision, and then you have another revision every quarter. So this is months and months and months delayed before you have the actual final data. And the first reading of Q1 GDP was plus 1.6%, which is pretty astounding. That's a significant growth, especially when everybody's been calling for a recession for, a long time now. Honestly, I think we've been talking about the potential of a recession for like 2 years.
Yeah, since we saw the shift.
Yeah, which kind of, I don't know, which is crazy. At some point it'll come. But that revision, the first revision of Q1 GDP just came out, and it went from plus 1.6 down to plus 1.3. So that's like a 20% reduction in the numbers, in the GDP numbers, and we still have yet another adjustment happening in a few more months, or a couple more months, for the final reading of Q1 GDP. So we're seeing a slowdown. The data that was projected was not accurate, and it's coming further down, and we haven't even gotten Q2. And so kind of diving into Q2.
Well, and government spending makes it in
Oh, yeah,
GDP
I'm glad you bring that up.
too. And so the government's been spending money like crazy.
Insane amounts.
Last
Lots of infrastructure,
4
roads,
years.
bridges,
Yeah.
millions and millions and millions of dollars. And not to mention COVID and all that stuff. That's kind of going away, but there's a lot of government spending still happening, which is pretty much
Probably what makes up most of that positive.
only, I think it probably is the only growth that we're seeing
For sure.
is the government spending.
Which is crazy.
Well, and what's crazy is if you look up the nation's debt or deficit in our budget, and it's like, it's ridiculous. Yet we're still spending. That's the only reason we're growing. Like really,
The largest it ever has been.
yeah, by far. Not. It's like a hockey stick.
I think we even talked about it in our last episode together, but the money we've spent as a nation the last 4 years has been the equivalent of what we spent
The previous
last
20, right?
Yeah, something like that. Like 20 years to spend the same amount of money we've
In
spent the
4
last
years.
4.
It's scary.
If that doesn't scream something, it's got it. It has to.
And yeah, there's this whole talk, like we were talking, kind of prepping to film this today, and we truly feel like and believe that there's a significant reset happening in the economy. People, we had, the Great Depression, obviously everybody knows that. Then we had the Great Recession in the 2008 era.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that. This one is starting to be coined as the Great Reset. And it seems like that's legitimately true. Like there needs to be a reset of the
Currency, just economics,
just period.
in general.
It's crazy. Like our country needs to actually run on a profit and loss. That's the weirdest thing that I think about, talking about government spending, which is a tangent we didn't actually plan on talking about. But you think about our business. We have to maintain a profit to keep everybody employed and to be able to offer everything that we offer to our clients, we have to balance a budget every single month. And there needs to be a positive most months, right? Some months there's negatives and we balance that, but that's only because we have a surplus. What we deal with the government right now is not only are we running a negative, we also are negative. We have a negative P&L and a negative balance sheet in the nation. Like clearly something needs to reset.
Yeah, I don't know if you know who Peter Schiff is.
Yeah. He's
Another
the ultimate bear.
Yeah, he's a big bear.
He's a weird guy.
Obviously on par. But very bullish towards gold and even real estate he seems to be pretty positive on for the most part as well. And I saw him on Twitter, or X, I guess it is called nowadays. He mentioned the recession this time around is going to be similar to what we saw 2008, but not in real estate, but U.S. Treasuries. He's mentioning U.S. Treasuries are going to be the victim this time around, which makes sense because they're being devalued.
And that's kind of scary. You think about all of the old folks or older folks that have their wealth
mostly
wrapped up into treasuries.
Yeah. Because it's the most secure investment you can make, right?
But
so
the point is, this great reset concept we think is legit. It's hard to figure out where it's going to be. I do think there's going to be some pain in commercial real estate. It's already happened. Like I saw, there was I can't remember. I think it was a building. It was either Minneapolis or Dallas. I don't know why those two come to mind, but there was a building that's 2 or 4 years ago. I think it was like 4 years ago, sold at like, oh my gosh, what was it? $150 million. And it just sold at foreclosure for $12 million. $150 million building sold at $12 million.
Gosh. And it's not funny. It's just crazy.
It's insane. So there's a lot of crazy stuff. Q1 GDP is a sign that it's slowing. And that was like a lot of this has started to formulate since Q1. Right? Yeah. I mean, like through Q1, we should say, like leading into March and April and May, things have become more and more hard. Like you drive by car dealerships, they are chock full of cars now. Whereas you couldn't even get a car 18 months ago? Couldn't even get it.
Yeah. Well, and I've been in one recently.
Yeah.
And the car dealerships that we know, like all the snacks and all the people around, and it always is full. Not the case anymore. It's like a ghost town.
Really?
No snacks, and it's so insignificant. But when you really think about it, what's the first thing to go when people are hurting? Those little amenities,
right? Things
like that. Employees, it's more of a zombified or a dead environment, and that's exactly how it felt at the dealership when I was there. And it's
insane.
Just in dealerships.
The scary thing is, which we've said many times, the scary thing is we are only, I think, in tune to this stuff because of what we do for a living, and we study this, and this is like our hobby. We recognize weird stuff like that.
Yeah.
Regular consumers aren't recognizing it because their mind's not even on that track, right? So most of the world is not recognizing this stuff. What they are recognizing, or what they are paying attention to, though, is what the news is telling us. And what the news is telling us is there's growth and everything's rainbows and butterflies.
Inflation's still rampant, and the economy's growing, and jobs are great.
Consumers are strong, and and everything's. It's like there's a false sense of security in the economy right now for most U.S. consumers because they don't pay attention to this stuff. So hopefully, people listening to this can take some of this to heart, and please share this, because I think it's things that maybe it's not doomsday, right? We're not saying it's doomsday. Everyone's still going to be able to live, and it's going to be fine, but you need to be mindful of some of this stuff and be prepping, which we've said many times before. Now, one other thing that's crazy, this is several weeks in a row, and we don't have exact statistics on this, but jobless claims are shifting pretty significantly. We're seeing initial jobless claims, which is people filing for unemployment for the first time, and then continuing claims, people filing for continuing claims, still looking for a job, can't find a job. Both of those metrics are increasing above expectations, not only just increasing, but more than economists are projecting for several weeks in a row. And the continuing
claims, I think that one is the biggest sign that the job market is not as strong as it's being advertised to everyone. Because if people are continuing to claim jobless, it's more difficult to find a job nowadays.
Yeah,
and I've heard multiple, I mean, even clients, like just word of mouth with other people, friends, family, just people you know, it's more difficult to find a job nowadays.
Yet we hear there's 4 job openings to every 1 unemployed person. It's like, well, obviously not. This is maybe just like a static job offering so that companies can find the highest quality candidates when they're ready to hire, maybe, is what's going on. But I agree with you.
A lot of part-time help. A lot of part-time help.
For sure. And the crazy thing is a lot of these job numbers, 1, have been part-time, but 2 have been government employees. And these government employees have been hired in a very large part on contract basis. So they're considered full-time employed, but they're only full-time employed to build that one bridge. And once that bridge is built, they're no longer employed. Yeah. And so that not only speaks to the GDP growth we were talking about earlier, but also the employment data, which also leads into consumer spending, which also leads to this fallacy that everything is strong and robust and the economy is so good. And it's definitely politically driven, especially in a year like we're in now, an election year where there's politics diving in. But that's kind of scary, despite the fact government's spending like crazy, despite the fact that we hear it's all good. Yeah. More people are becoming unemployed and more people are staying unemployed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we even had the conversation today about just local places and people we know directly where their places of work are struggling. They're cutting down on hours. Cars specifically not selling. I know we have personal experiences with that. Gosh, there's a list of things that we wrote down here.
Well, you said like a couple gyms that you know, local gyms that you know of.
Yeah.
And you know for a fact, not
hours being cut, memberships canceling,
like scary levels of memberships canceling, like they don't know if they'll be able to stay open, right? One of them that you knew of actually already closed.
Oh, yes. Yep.
One closed, and then one of them is like really struggling.
Yep.
Right? That's crazy. And then the other thing is that we saw on, I think this is also on X or Twitter, this video of a bunch of chains of restaurants closing. Like,
oh yeah,
hundreds, thousands of stores of restaurants.
Some
closing.
Entirely, like the whole business,
the whole brand is going away. Yeah. It's like the economy's not good if an entire brand is closing, or hundreds of locations of common popular chains that all of us have eaten at before are closing. You can look this up. Just look, restaurant chains closing 2024. Google it. You'll see it.
Huge list.
Huge list. Huge. And it's, let's see, there was, the other thing that kind of tied into that was there's a couple things that I've also looked at. You can look at this too, like historic, 5 or 10 year inflation on restaurants. So if you Google something like Starbucks inflation or McDonald's inflation, I've seen a couple of infographics on social media, and we've seen, now these are not the chains that are closing down, mind you, but we've seen chains inflation average to the tune of 10 and 20% per year over the past 5 or 10 years. Their prices are going up between 10 and 20%.
And the quantity, quantity is going down. Shrinkflation.
Yeah, right.
On top of that.
Right, they're serving less
a lot
and
of people are
charging more.
Noticing that. Yeah. There's one place in particular is a huge trend right now, shrinkflation. They're shrinking portions, and they're obviously increasing prices. It's going the opposite way.
Right. I mean, that's like double whammy.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I'm sure these other chains that are closing have attempted the same thing, yet they still can't remain profitable. And now add on to that, there's going to be less consumer spending because we're going to have more unemployed people. And like this is kind of like a death spiral. It's crazy because if they
you wonder if they did the data of like cost per ounce,
right?
Not just inflation on price increases for the same product, like
the
cost per ounce,
combine shrinkflation and price inflation.
It'd be
insane. It would, that would be. A couple other crazy things that we've seen personally, just kind of like what we try to do is pay attention to the data that we subscribe to. We listen to several economists, and we get strong data. This is not just conjecture. These aren't things that we're making up. This is data. We're studying this stuff, reading reports at least 2 times a day, 5 days a week. In addition to like my hobby is kind of like reading economic reports on any various websites over the weekends, and that's like my feed is full of that stuff.
Yeah.
But some things that we notice, that's kind of what we're talking about now. We've got self-employed borrowers. We deal with a lot of self-employed people, and it's a really great skill set of our team, actually, to deal with these types of people that want to invest in real estate. We're really good at dealing with them. But we're noticing, because we have so many of those clients, a pretty distinct trend of income going down for most of these people. There are a few that it's going up, like in the trade fields. Like construction trades, they're actually earning more money. Well, some of them are. Some of them are earning less, but we're seeing so many clients of our self-employed. 22
good services
was higher than, so 23 was lower than 22, and 24 P&L is tracking even lower than 23. So these small businesses are struggling, which is relating to households, which is relating to their ability to funnel more money into the economy. And again, going back into that cycle. So that's something we're seeing. What else did we have?
The domino effect, really.
Yeah. I talked to a friend of mine that runs a trucking company, and trucking was booming, obviously, for a long time when there were all of the shipment delays because of COVID and the pent-up demand that we saw. But their trucking company, they are slashing prices for freight shipments and trucking services. And not only are they slashing prices, but despite slashing prices, they're struggling to find work at these discounted prices. And, these people, crazy thing is they financed trucks, and they've got obligations and they've got expenses, yet they're having to cut their prices and they still can't find enough work. So these are things that are boiling, and it's going to come to a head here. Kira mentioned grocery stores. I didn't even notice this, probably because I don't go to grocery stores that often, but basically it's only self-checkout. So you go there and there's maybe like one checker checking, like providing the service to check you out. Otherwise you're on your own. Like, that's crazy. It used to be like,
well, now that she mentioned that, I noticed that too. I still go to the grocery store, and it's definitely mainly self-checkout now. And one employee monitoring the self-checkout area.
And none of the regular check stands are even open for the most part, now that you think about it. And companies cutting hours. Oh, TJ mentioned he got his car detailed recently, and he was talking to the detail guy, because we're always kind of cueing our clients and people that we work with, how's the economy? Are you seeing any slowdowns? Are you noticing anything? We're always asking these questions because it's really what we like to understand. But the detailer said, he's still doing fine because he's really got himself in a unique clientele base. But for years, minivans and old used cars were getting details. Now all that he's doing is like sports cars, basically. The people that the economy doesn't really impact because they can still afford to pay for a detail, but those that the economy does impact, where they don't have the disposable income, or maybe like the COVID stimulus is gone, so on and so forth.
Cut out all the luxuries.
Exactly. You're just going to wash your own car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are some signs that we're seeing, and time will tell. But we do truly believe that something is looming. And at some point, we're going to be right. At some point, there will be a recession. We are paying way more attention to it than most. But what we encourage everybody to do is, consider all this. Maybe just start paying attention to some of these weird little things that we're noticing in your life. But most importantly, get proactively prepared for what will come at some point. It for sure will come. And a good way to get proactively prepared is working with mortgage pros like us to either get yourself into owning real estate, so you're accumulating some wealth and equity where you have some sort of backstop financially to support you and your family in a time of potential duress. And if you're already a homeowner, how can you strategically get yourself in a position that you're tapping into the equity in your home that can support you in the event.
Budget
exactly. Yeah,
if you have consumer debts right now,
yeah,
great time to get those freed up. Gosh, you can save up, depending on the case. With all the auto loan payments people have, you can save thousands a month with consolidation. Well, even with a higher rate. You might think your 2% rate, if you have that right now, is the way to go. But if you could free up $1,500 a month, the 2% rate really doesn't matter.
Well, and get this, 2% doesn't matter, but that $1,500 a month, now you could just, with the same money out of pocket, pivot back into the debt and be snowballing the debt payoff and
pay it off quicker and actually pay less in interest.
Pay less in interest than you would now. And
even though you might
all
be at
your debt's on. Your house is paid off, everything.
Yeah.
And in addition, the mortgage interest is tax deductible for most people. So like there are some very strategic
Now
benefits.
you're pocketing more too.
Exactly.
You're
Yeah,
paying
from your
less to Uncle
paychecks.
Sam.
Exactly. So we just encourage you, be mindful of this and lean on professionals that you know. We would love the opportunity to help you to strategically get yourself in a position to weather the imminent storm. We don't know when it will happen, but it will happen, and you need to be prepared to weather it. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you. Please be sure to share, subscribe, comment if there's anything that you want us to talk about or any questions you have or any debate on the information we shared. We'd love to hear from you guys, but thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for tuning in. For more industry insights, follow us on all platforms at Loans Elevated.
And to get in touch with our team, call or text 801-713-4000 or visit loanselevated.com.